What are you looking at?
Just enjoying the new art.
New art?
Yeah, they polished a few things, made some new event art, changed some relic behavior, and balanced a few things.
Hey, it's Checkmate, and I have some exciting news to share about Die in the Dungeon. A new update was dropped over the weekend, adding even more content to the game. I'll give you a breakdown of everything that's changed, so you know what to look out for in the dungeon. As Cinder noticed, there is some new art in the dungeon. Most apparent is the new event art. This is a nice improvement to the events that really immerses you and draws you into the dungeon rather than just reading words off a text box. Some of these events become so much more ominous, like this mirror event, that you don't get when just reading the text options. You may not get another chance to see this if you've already unlocked Listfer, but the new art actually shows him on the ground. In addition, there are some new background animations for the different areas. Some of the relics got some new art updates, and while there's a few that changed drastically, most of these things were just edits to get them more in the style of the rest of the relics or make them a little more unique from the others. Transparent Prism actually looks a little bit transparent now, and Shadow Cloak and Liquid Karma also look pretty cool and a little more like their namesake. There are some various polishes that you might not notice on the Finish Turn button, the dice board, different dice shadows for the different dice size, but I know what you're really here for, to see what this mysterious jester really looks like. I haven't made up my mind what to think yet. The jester to me has always been such a faceless, mysterious entity that to see him now is very weird. Now there's been some pretty large balance changes. One in particular is around poison. Poison now deals its damage before the enemy attacks. This has the effect of making poison a lot more powerful. This is a really nice buff to Listfer since his starting relic, Scarlet Flask, heavily uses poison. Because of this change, the Plague Doctor no longer has the poisonous effect in D6 difficulties and higher. If this hadn't changed, this would be tremendously unfair to the player, since they would enter the fight and immediately take damage without being able to do anything about it. To help balance it out again, the Plague Doctor does have increased stats now. The exposed slots in the Scorpion battle work a little bit differently now, and a little more intuitively, so they no longer zero out your non-attack dice like your heal or your block when you place them on the exposed spot. There's been a couple notable changes to balance out the frogs as well. Listfer now gets mirror dice that roll 6s naturally instead of 4s. This limits his ability to quickly gain power with mirror, but is more in line with his behavior in the Origins demo. Mango's starting deck has also changed to get her a little more balanced. She now starts with 2 heavy D8s, a D8 heavy attack and a D8 heavy block. In addition, instead of having a D4 boost, she now has 3 D6 boosts. This balances out her energy cost a lot better and also really helps highlight the balance between D8's high energy cost and also its high values, which play in very nicely naturally with heavy. Now there have been a ton of changes to relic behavior to help balance them against each other. And when I say a ton, I mean a ton. So let me go through them one at a time and compare the original behavior with the new behavior. First up is Forgotten Manifesto. The original behavior was dice with all faces equal get +1 extra value. This relic has been buffed a little bit, with the new behavior being dice with all faces equal get +2 extra value. This definitely helps it be a more competitive choice, as you were sacrificing your dice faces to get only a +1. The Checkered Bow Tie originally gained you 1 lucky on even turns. This is changed to at the start of the battle gain +3 lucky. This is not necessarily a buff or a nerf. Most battles probably take less than 6 turns anyway, so getting 3 lucky at the start that you can use right away is pretty good. More importantly, this change really helps to simplify its behavior. So instead of having to check which turn you're on and plan accordingly, you just get the lucky up front. Simplifying the common relics is a running theme to some of these changes. Bubbly Cement is similar. The old behavior was on even turns you gain block equal to the total number of times you've received damage. That is such a mouthful, and it's really complex to plan around. A lot of the time I just pick it up because there's no downside, and sometimes I just show up with extra block. The new behavior is every time you gain block, gain +1 additional block. Again, the relic has changed so completely that it's not really a matter of being buffed or nerfed. I really like this new behavior better. I think it's got a lot more practical uses and is a lot easier to understand. Determination Juice is a relic that I've basically never used. I picked it up once from its event just to have it in my codex. The old behavior was the first dice you place on the board will be re-rolled once per turn. The new behavior is now once per turn, the first dice you place on the board will be re-rolled to its highest possible face. Again, it's still a pretty complex niche relic, and its event is still in the late Area 3, but I think this buff might make it worth checking out. The Bubble Generator relic was a terrible choice for the event that it was in. The original behavior was, at the start of your turn, take 2 damage. At the end of battle, heal 10 HP. This is a really bad trade-off if your battles are going to end up longer than 5 turns, as you're going to take more damage than you're going to heal. The new behavior is now at the start of the turn, take 1 damage. At the end of battle, heal plus 6 HP. I would call this a buff. On the one hand, the break-even point is 6 turns rather than 5, so that's a slight buff, but really the benefit is you're taking less damage per turn. 2 damage, especially early on, is a significant chunk of your HP, which makes it a lot easier to die accidentally. By only taking 1 damage per turn, this could help you trigger Listfer's poison while also not running the risk of dying too quickly. Dancing Shurikens got a slight buff. Previously it dealt 3 damage to a random enemy for every 6 dice used, now it deals 4 damage. Bloody Fang has also changed as well. The previous behavior was each time you receive 3 or more unblocked damage, gain 2 regen. Now the new behavior is each time you receive 3 or more unblocked damage, heal 2. The difference is subtle, but it does represent a nerf. Receiving regen allowed you to stack up healing at the end of your turn just a little bit, so even though it halved at the end of the turn, you would still be able to heal back more than just 2 health. The heal effect happens immediately, and is just that, 2 HP, that's it. This is still a decent relic because it helps mitigate some of the damage and gives you a little bit of survivability, but it definitely has received a bit of a nerf here. I think the requirement to receive 3 or more unblocked damage is also still pretty complex, and it feels a bit arbitrary. There are different relics that deal maybe 1 damage, and enemies deal variable amounts of damage, so it makes more sense that this would trigger anytime you receive damage. The leader badge has changed slightly. The previous behavior was dice with their first face active get plus 2 extra value. The new behavior now gives you plus 3 extra value. It's a slight buff, but doesn't really change the equation to make it particularly good for any specific build. The Watermelon Slice behavior has changed. The previous relic behavior was if exactly 3 dice on the board have a face value of 3, all dice on the board gain plus extra value. This was really complicated and hard to do to get exactly 3 dice that had a face value of 3. The new behavior is if 3 or more dice on the board have a face value of 3, all dice on the board get plus 3 extra value. It's a slight buff and also makes it a little easier to achieve, but it's still nowhere near the power of the original demos that probably no one even remembers now. The Magnetic Rocks relic has a slight nerf. Instead of dice with the face value of 0 getting plus 4 extra value, they now get plus 3 extra value. The Triangle Amulet has also been modified. The previous behavior was dice with the face value of 3 get plus 2 extra value. Now, dice with odd faces get plus 1 extra value. This is now more of like a reverse winning bingo for odd dice, which is nice to see. The original behaviors was kind of a weird free build that you could kind of use with Watermelon, sort of, so this just makes it a little more versatile. The Golden Fruit relic originally gave you plus 6 max health whenever you picked it up. This has been completely changed. Now at the end of battle, you get plus 1 your max HP. This is like better munchable dopamine. This is a really solid relic choice, and I think it's definitely got a buff here. You're probably going to end up fighting more than 6 battles anyway, so it's a cool new change for those going for high max HP. The Melting Knife relic has also changed. Originally, attack dice got plus 2 extra value, while block dice got minus 1 extra value. Now attack dice still get plus 2 extra value, but heal dice instead get minus 1 extra value. This brings the Melting Knife to match the Frozen Knife a little bit better. The Guidance Finger relic is one that I haven't used very much. The old behavior was at the start of the turn, an odd face will be selected. Dice with that face value get times 2 to their final value. While this is pretty cool to have multiplier relics and help achieve really high power, the randomness of the odd face being selected made it pretty impractical for most of my builds. The new behavior gives dice with that face value plus 4 extra value instead of doubling it, so definitely a nerf. Liquid Dexterity has changed. The original behavior was dice will always roll their last face on even turns, draw minus 1 dice on odd turns. The new, much simplified behavior is at the start of the turn, draw plus 1 dice. I definitely like how much simpler this new design is. On the same note, Liquid Dexterity originally had the behavior of dice will always roll their last face on even turns, draw minus 1 dice on odd turns. The new behavior is at the start of the turn, gain plus 1 lucky modifier. Once again, really big fan of how much simpler this new design is. Liquid Dexterity was always a relic that I never really got behind because of that draw -1 dice. Shadow Cloak has been changed again. Instead of receiving 2 damage at the start of your turn and your block now halves at the end of the turn, you now gain Fortify at the start of the battle, and at the start of the turn you take damage equal to the current turn number. This makes it a lot more natural to stack block with Shadow Cloak, but makes that cost a little higher. The longer that you stall, the more likely it is that you are going to break your block with the increasing amounts of damage. I will say, however, that still seems like a pretty small cost if you have a sufficiently powerful block build. Promo Ticket has now been modified. Instead of the next shop having 2 free relics and then Promo Ticket going away, the shops will now include 1 additional free sample. Assuming you get this early on, that's potentially a lot more free samples that you can use, and the old shops were pretty limited on what relics they offered for free anyway. Monkey Paw has been modified. The old behavior was when killed, revive with 25% HP. The new behavior adds gain 1 pure modifier. This will hopefully help players avoid being killed immediately by multi-attack enemies or multiple enemies. Origami Frog has been nerfed a little bit. The original behavior was dice in your hand at the end of the turn will no longer be discarded and you draw +1. The new behavior simply removes the draw +1. Scavenger Beak has been majorly changed. Originally, it added 1 relic to all non-event reward choices. This was pretty cool to help get some relic diversity and try to find a specific relic for your build. The new behavior is gain 2 coins whenever you enter a shop. It's been completely changed. It's not even fair to say it's a buff or a nerf. The relic is just completely different now. The Greedy Whisperer relic has changed. Not only is it no longer called Greedy Whisperer, the old behavior caused you to take 5 damage at the start of the battle, but you drew +2 every time. It was basically worse Joker. The new behavior is now if you have no dice in your hand at the end of the turn, gain +1 bonus. The Corrupted Mushroom has completely changed. The original behavior was increase +18 your max HP and your block dice get -3 extra value. The new behavior is now gain +3 D6 rolls max HP, and at the start of the battle you receive 1 D4 rolls worth of damage. This is pretty similar to how the potions operate now, so it's a really cool change for a relic. While the potential max upside remains the same as potentially getting +18 max health, the likelihood of getting that is substantially lower, so this is still a little bit of a nerf. The Wandering Helmet relic has changed. Originally, attack dice gained +6 extra value, and then you reduce that value by -2 for each block dice in your deck. The new behavior is attack dice gain +4 extra value, and then you reduce this value for -1 for each block dice in your deck. Whether this is a buff or a nerf is really up to you and how you play. This does reduce the total possible amount of attack value you can receive if you were to be crazy and get rid of all of your block dice. And the Letter of Recommendation relic has also changed. Instead of boost dice that target dice with a face value of 0 gaining +3 boost value, they now gain +2 boost value. This update's been pretty hard on the 0 build, but it's still very viable. Unfortunately, Letter of Recommendation here has gotten a slight nerf. I think this update in particular might be confusing to existing players or players that have played in the past and are coming back to it. So I'll plan a series of YouTube shorts about each of these relics and their new behavior to help get the word out and make it more common knowledge on what these relics do now. In addition to all these changes to relic behavior, there's been even more changes to relic rarity. I think the main driver of this was to help balance out the epic, rare, uncommon, and common pools a little bit more. Previously, there were a lot of epic and rare relics in comparison to the number of common relics. The Baby Tick relic is now rare, it used to be common. I agree with this change. When you use Baby Tick with Cinder, you can make default mirror dice even more powerful. Empty Chest is now uncommon, it used to be common. I agree with this change. Orange Clover is now common, and it used to be uncommon. I agree with this change. Dancing Shurikens is now common, and it used to be uncommon. I'd say this is probably another buff for it in addition to the change it's already seen, as hopefully common means you'll be able to pick it up more frequently than uncommon. Ring of Exchange is now rare, it used to be uncommon. Toxic Cloud is now common, it used to be uncommon. Bucket of Paint is now common, it used to be uncommon. The Leader Badge is now common, it used to be uncommon. The Pendulum of Doom is now common, it used to be uncommon. Watermelon Slice is now common, it used to be uncommon. I think this represents more of a shift to make all relics that you get from events common instead of being of different rarities. Twin Scrolls is now common, it used to be uncommon. Blinding Light Bulb is now common, it used to be uncommon. The Miner Hat is now uncommon, it used to be rare. Magnetic Rocks is now uncommon, and it used to be rare. I think this is fitting since it got a bit of a nerf from its previous value. The Triangle Amulet is now common, it used to be rare. The Ring of Berserker is now uncommon, it used to be rare. I think this is a good move also. The Joker is now uncommon. it used to be rare. The Makeshift Trench is now uncommon, used to be rare. Crimson Blade is now uncommon, used to be rare. Munchable Dopamine is now common, used to be rare. Snake Eyes is now common, used to be rare. It's especially common when you're doing speed runs and getting a ton of events in Area 2. Bullseye is now uncommon, used to be rare. Evergreen Sap is now uncommon, used to be rare. Guidance Finger is now uncommon, used to be rare. Nuclear Button is now rare, used to be epic. Blindfold of Rage is now rare, used to be epic. I agree with this change. Survival Kit is now uncommon, used to be epic. I agree with this change a lot too. Liquid Karma and Liquid Dexterity are now uncommon. They used to be epic. I think the changes to simplify them and bring them more as mirrors to each other make this a good move also. Sacred Maul is now uncommon, used to be epic. Prismatic Mango is now rare, used to be epic. Amphibian Plush is now rare, used to be epic. I think both of these relics make extremely powerful rare relics. Providential Vial is now uncommon, used to be epic. Nightmare Plasma is now rare, used to be epic. Monkey Paw is now rare, used to be epic. Origami Frog is now uncommon, used to be epic. I think even before, calling it epic was a pretty big stretch, and now with the nerf, I think uncommon is a much better fit for it. Scavenger Beak is now common, used to be rare. This is another one that changed dramatically, so I think common fits it really well. Recommendation Letter is now common, used to be uncommon. Tree Stump is now uncommon, used to be epic, very good choice. Red Marker is now uncommon, used to be rare. Greedy Whisperer is now common, used to be rare. Top Hat is now rare, used to be epic. Visionary Egg is now rare, used to be epic. Corrupted Mushroom is now rare, used to be epic. And Equestrian Peace is now uncommon, used to be epic. I agree with this change. I think Equestrian Peace is definitely not powerful enough to be called an epic relic, and since it's uncommon, players will probably have the chance to find it earlier, and it'll also be less expensive at the shop, which will then allow more builds built around it to be possible. Whew, that was a lot. There are still a lot of plans upcoming, and according to the update posts, still this summer. Controller support is still in beta, but there's going to be improvements coming. Endless mode is still on the roadmap, and I'm really looking forward to that. I'm going to find an endless damage exploit and take it all the way through endless, and see if it really is endless. Elite enemies are still coming. I'm really excited to see what these battles end up looking like, and another teaser for a huggable surprise. I plead the fifth.